It's that time again, folks. 1 week of training camp down. Stonks are back, and they're booming. It's Bill Landis, Jeremy Birmingham. I'm Austin Ward. It's the Podcast Daily. It's Wednesday. There's practice later on today, and we'll be in here to talk to some Buckeyes. But before we get into that, risers, fallers, who's holding steady? It's 1 week at camp. Bill, what do you got?
I got offensive line talk for you.
You do?
Yeah.
I, for one, am stunned to hear that.
That is the biggest upset of all. A, you guys knew I was going to bring up Stonks because it's the first Wednesday of camp.
That's right.
And B, that Bill kicks it off with a little bit of offensive line talk. I think we can only guess what Berm will do, but you can take us where we need to go.
So I have multiple ways I can go here because I like a lot of what I've seen. But I'll ask you guys first. Have I talked too much about Josh Simmons?
No.
Can I keep going?
Enough about Josh
Can
Simmons.
I keep going?
This is the first I'm hearing.
I'm just welcoming you to the party.
Oh, I was going to say, I am guilty of probably rolling my eyes at you when you said that you thought Josh Simmons was going to be, a day 2 draft pick, like a week after he got here.
Yeah.
Do you need help patting your back?
That's fine.
I'm
used to it by now.
I'm there with you. He has looked very good in the practices we watched. All 4. I made sure that I spent a little bit of time watching him every day, and then when I got the shoulder pads on and they were doing the pass rush 101s, just didn't lose. And he's moving incredibly well. You watch him in the run game, his feet, I think, are the kind of feet and athleticism and agility that special offensive linemen have. And I think skill-wise, kind of everything's there. It's about playing more, banking more experience, probably getting more used to playing against better competition more consistently than he was playing against the Mountain West, obviously. And there were some ups and downs last year, but last year was way better than I thought it was going to be. But it's not even about that. If last year never even happened and you just went out there and watched him at camp these first couple practices, you would think to yourself, yeah, that's what an Ohio State offensive tackle is supposed to look like. So he is a big reason why I am probably more than cautiously optimistic now about where the offensive line is headed, because you just want to be able to look up and down the group of 5 that you think is going to start and say, are there dudes up here? And I think he's a dude.
Let me ask you this. Why is this fundamentally different for you than in the spring when you predicted, bold prediction-wise, that Ohio State would have the number 1 rushing attack in the country? Are you talking about just Josh Simmons as a pass protector? Are you talking about what you already had high expectations for the offensive line if you thought they were going to lead the country in rushing?
Yeah, I mean, that was more about Chip and more about the running backs, because Chip has done a lot with a little, I think, in his past. At UCLA, UCLA did not have tremendous offensive lines, so they had incredible rushing attacks with those offensive lines. And I thought that Ohio State's offensive line would at least be better than that. What the ceiling was, I don't know, and I still don't know. So much of that conversation was honestly not an offensive line conversation for me. Now I'm adding that on top of it, and I'm kind of ready to, I don't know, at this point, quadruple down on my prediction that they're going to lead the country in rushing. I just think I thought maybe the ceiling for the offensive line was maybe slightly better than a Big Ten average offensive line. And now I am past that. I think that's wrong. I think they actually have a chance to be the best in the conference and in the conversation for best in the country if they continue to do what I've seen so far.
Do you know what happens if you jump off sides at San Diego State? Nothing.
You get a burrito.
No one cares.
They give you a burrito on a surfboard.
Hang 10. It is about...
You lose to Wyoming.
It is about your mentals adjusting to this place as well. Realizing... Yeah. This stuff matters, and I need to be better. It is a lot easier to get focused and dialed in. You said you knew what I was going to pick. What did?
No, I'm not going to do it.
Let's hear it.
No,
I want to know
because I want you to say it.
I want to know what you think. I'm not. I promise you, I will go with what I initially was thinking.
It's a trap. I'll do it.
I promise.
Wait, hold on. Wait. Tell me what's going to be.
Marvell Reese.
No, even though it's sitting over there, looks great.
You're not going to talk about?
No, I'm going to talk.
Oh
wow. Colonel Tate.
Excellent pick.
Who I just, the more I think about it, and all of the hype around Jeremiah Smith and all of the talk about Emeka Egbuka and his return, someone's still going to have to cover Carnell Tate. And I don't know any team in the country.
Here's some bad news. They're going to also have to cover Emeka Egbuka.
Right, but I'm saying you have to cover Emeka and Jeremiah, and that's going to be what people are talking about. But then there's still Carnell Tate. And between him and G. Scott, I think those two guys are going to have a pretty good years, both of them, because they're never going to be covered.
Right.
And Carnell Tate, we have to go back. Go back. 2 years ago, Marvin Harrison talking about Carnell Tate in here was the same way people are talking about Jeremiah Smith. Now, it's Jeremiah Smith has since elevated and gone above that, and the conversation is in the ether in a way that I don't think we've ever seen for a freshman wide receiver. But in this building, the buzz around Carnell Tate was exceptional, and he's lived up to it, and he's ready to go. And I don't think he's never going to be anyone's number one priority to cover. And I think that is going to be a disaster for college football because.
And a real good time for Carnell.
Yeah, like, I really think he's going to be, and he's, I don't know how they're going to line these guys up. We don't know if it's always going to be a Mecca in the slot. Carnell can play inside. Like, I think that we are all guilty of probably buying into the Jeremiah Smith hype or creating it. But
I stand here comfortable on my guilt.
Yeah, I mean, I'm justified. We're justified in doing so, but we don't have to do that at the expense of Carnell Tate, who is going to be a first-round NFL draft pick in a year, or 2 years. So
on the first couple of days of practice, he was catching a lot more balls than Jeremiah Smith.
You know why? Because you can't cover all of them at the same time. That's true. He's going to be the one left in single coverage. And who in the country has a Jordan Hancock at the nickel corner?
Ohio State, I think.
So who else? Can we borrow Jordan Hancock, please?
If you're not using Jermaine Matthews, can he come over here?
I mean, we don't live in that world. So there's that. I think we've just all been.
What if Ohio State started playing split squad non-conference games?
We've all been looking. They should.
Honestly, that would be far more entertaining.
We've all been looking past Carnell Tate, and I'm here to tell you it's time to stop. Buy the stock.
I agree, definitely.
You're supposed to point to the camera and say America.
America.
You're in training camp mode. You got to get back into mid-season
camp. Stock America. Yeah.
There's this defensive tackle that people just cannot stop telling me about.
Jason Moore?
No, it's Caden McDonald, and I really enjoyed.
And you were worried about me being predictable.
So I thought we could all get it out of the way.
Play the hits, baby.
But make sure that we get the hits out there, and then people will stick around for the new stuff, and then we'll play the encore, and you can talk about Arvell Reese then, and we can get into that. People will not stop talking about Caden McDonald to me, and they're just putting on the full pad. So I don't really know, but the way that he went through summer workouts, the way that he practices, the work ethic, all of those things. When Jim Knowles was asked about the defensive tackles on Friday, Caden McDonald's name was not brought up, and he was kind of like, you might want to remember Caden McDonald. And I said, thank you, Jim. Thank you for your service.
Kid shows up when you're watching the E-line for sure. It's a really impressive group in general. Like, put Jason Moore and Caden McDonald and Hero Canoe and Ty Hamilton and Tyleek Williams all next to each other. And it's like, yep, that'll work. But Caden does find a way to stand out.
It's pretty wild. Now, we
all heard Jim Knowles say on Friday that they were going to run 11 defensive linemen at a time.
Well, I think when we hear from Larry, he'll probably say that's more closer to 13.
Why not?
And 13 personnel is 13 defensive linemen.
I think that's within the realm of possibility. I do think, so when you look at that group, the person that catches your eye first and immediately is Jason Moore. So you guys are on a very secure branch out there. The future is secure. So you can also take, if you don't want to specifically narrow it down to one defensive tackle, as you're saying, Bill, you could invest in the entire group. You
could invest in the class of 2023 defensive tackles.
You could do that as you have a number of different ways to invest, and you can diversify your portfolio. I think that Michigan's tandem there gets the most preseason love, maybe
justifiably. Their top
two are very good. Yeah.
Tyleek and Ty are right in that conversation. They're maybe not going to get the same level of NFL draft buzz. But man, once you get past that first two, and even if they're right here, the depth for Ohio State is absurd.
And that was a question, right, coming into camp. Like there weren't a whole lot of questions, but I think defensive tackle depth, whether or not those young guys and experienced guys could kind of rise to that level, was a fairly large question. And have we seen enough to say that, yes, they're definitely going to do that? Probably not. But I think we've seen enough flashes to get you excited about their potential to do so, and I think they probably will by the end of camp.
Okay, that's round number one. Berm, start round number two.
Let's go.
That's right.
He chose the robot.
I wasn't ready to go next.
I know.
You really got me.
Keep you on your toes. That's when the truth comes out.
The truth is that I asked one of the linebackers on Tuesday which quarterback they don't want to tackle. And he said 18. And I think there was good reason to expect that Will Howard would ultimately win the quarterback job. It's elevated. That's now it's hard to imagine it going a different way based on just the conversations we had in here on Tuesday, talking to people off the record, just seeing the way that Will Howard is now with the team. And my stonk watch is that's going to happen. Buy into that happening sooner than later.
How soon?
I think by Saturday.
Okay.
Like an official proclamation?
I think that they'll have it announced. Now, I don't have any insight into that. There's no inside information. I just feel like if the first 5 days went as good as they've gone, that's probably something they really needed to see. Because, again, we were all looking and thinking that this would be the case even in spring, but there was enough inconsistency in Will Howard's game, especially passing the ball. And he'd been here for a month and a half at that point. Yep. So you couldn't really deep dive into it. But it just seems more and more clear that he's going to be the guy. And if you know that he's going to be the guy, then there's no point in holding it off.
Yeah. And stock in Ohio State's starting quarterback is probably
it's a good one to have.
Especially with these weapons around. Yeah, but I think probably now a little more affordable than it'll be in 3 months.
Yeah, I'm
3 weeks maybe.
I mean, I mentioned this to you on Saturday when we were out here. I just think he's going to be really, really good. And whatever Will Howard's Heisman stuff is right now, I
believe he's at plus 1,800.
I'm pretty close to just putting down a couple units on it because why would you not? He's going to throw for 30 some touchdowns. He's probably going to run for 8 or 9 or 10 touchdowns and 400 plus yards. He's going to throw for 3,000, throw for 30 touchdowns and run for 500 yards. And if Ohio State wins the national championship, he's going to New York if that's the case.
Yeah.
Well, he would already have had to have been to New York.
Yeah. Well, he
can go again though.
If they win the Big Ten.
Well, sure.
Then
are they still doing the Heisman then?
Yes.
Ooh, Heisman, you're stupid.
You want them to do it after the postseason?
Yes.
Yeah, I agree.
Been stupid. Because then
make it a Valentine's Day treat.
Ezekiel Elliott would have a Heisman if that was the case.
Send everyone to New York on Valentine's Day. Get a nice romantic dinner in the Big Apple.
Ew.
It's not.
Also, let's stop doing it in New York.
Let's stop doing it in New York.
It says the guy who doesn't have to go to New York to cover it. It's the worst experience you can possibly have.
Well, it involves the city of New York, so it can't be good.
Yeah.
And
I'm going to the city.
That's exactly what I say when I have to go.
Bet on Will Howard. That's what I'm saying.
Bet on Will Howard.
I like it.
That's actually a literal stock tip that you can use.
Yeah.
Wait, I know that player props are no longer allowed.
You can still vote
on awards.
You can still vote on awards.
Yeah, you can do awards. I'll buy some James Peoples stock.
Damn it.
I think he's got it. He's got really good balance. He's, from what I can tell in these practices, has good vision, agility, speed, all that stuff, and it doesn't really seem too big for him. And I understand that running back is probably the easiest position to take to quickly as a true freshman. We definitely have multiple examples in recent history of that happening here. I don't know that a whole lot is going to be asked of him. He's going to get the ball. He's going to have opportunities to show what he can do. He needs to get experience because as things stand right now, it looks like he might be running back one going into the 2025 season, which I am kind of okay with based off what I've seen from him so far. I think he was kind of, I don't know, it felt like he was overlooked a little bit in the recruiting process. I don't know if that's because people were waiting to see if they might bring in somebody else in addition to him. And then obviously there was a lot of stuff in the class.
It's because he committed early.
The class after him, there was a lot of intrigue.
Missed some time with injury as a senior, and then you had the Jordan Lyle discussion.
Yeah.
People thinking Lyle might have been better. But
right. And I thought that too at the time. And I don't know, maybe that'll turn out to be the case. But James Peoples, I think, is plenty good enough to be this team's starting running back based on everything I've seen so far. And when that time comes, I'd like to be holding a little bit of stock in it already.
It's a good time to get it.
Yeah.
I don't know why this has happened. We talked about Cody Simon and his value to the defense and how I feel like maybe it's a little bit undervalued, underappreciated. Not by everybody. I can't speak for everybody, but we've tried to hammer home that point of how important he is. But then when we talk about, well, who would be that next guy in at Mike? I think we've had conversations, Bill, where it's like, well, maybe they would just play Sonny and CJ together at that time. Maybe that's how that would work. And I think that means that Gabe Powers is becoming the new most overlooked member of that linebacker unit. Mm-hmm. The way that Jim Knowles and James Laurinaitis talk about this guy and his ability and the way he's showing up athletically, and if he'd be ready to go in as the backup Mike, and that's sort of like what Jim Knowles' expectation would be. That's pretty important. that role is physically demanding, and we've seen that multiple years in a row. We saw that when Cody Simon was a starter in the first place, and we saw that with Tommy Eichenberg dealing with injuries throughout the year. If you are going to play not just, even 12 games, a 12-game schedule for a Big Ten team is a grind at that position. The amount that you're going to have to go through physically and the number of tackles that you have to make, there's going to be something that hurts. Ohio State's going to need another Mike linebacker, and I really think Gabe Powers is more ready to do that than he gets credit for.
100%.
Yeah, and that's another guy where you think about 2025. Like, I don't know that he was in my mind to be a starting Mike linebacker before we got out here, before we heard what Jim Knowles said about him the other day, but I think he's trending toward that.
He made a bunch of plays even in the spring. We were seeing him in coverage, like 7-on-7 and red zone stuff.
He's like savvy, like he just like understands.
He's an old school
passing concepts.
Father's a football coach. Like there's a lot of stuff that he has in the bank of like, oh, I like that characteristic. That we often overlook because maybe he's not a 4.45 guy, but he's probably like a 4.58 guy, which is newsflash, that's still pretty freaking fast. Like he's still pretty hyper athletic for a normal human being.
Now there may still be packages where Sonny and CJ are playing together, but
and Arvell
in terms of getting through the year and needing a Mike backup, you cannot ask Cody Simon to play 900 snaps.
You sure can. I hope they don't.
That would be a lot. That would be nuts. So I think maybe we need to throw a couple units out there on Gabe Powers having like some sort of meaningful role for Ohio State. Not a starting role, but
you figure he needs to play as many snaps as Cody did like 2 years ago.
2 years ago,
right?
the last 2 years.
Like 240, 250 snaps.
I think so. He's not played like hardly at all, other than special teams, yeah.
And this is a case where both of you guys have stressed this over and over. There are going to have to be points in games where you're thinking not just about the future, 2025, like build these guys some experience so that they can be starters down the road. I think you have to think about it from this year, protecting your starters because of 16 to 17 games. Like we've made that point, I think, at other positions, but it has to be done at linebacker as well.
There's not a spot on the field that gets hit or hits more often than linebackers.
Yeah.
Who's taking the first one in the third round?
Bill.
Okay. Brandon Innes. I think I've gone all offense. That's okay. Brandon Innes. Ryan Day said at Big Ten Media Days, like you feel Brandon Innes when he's out there. And then we got out here and you felt him. It's like it was real. He like from the moment he catches the ball, you almost like hold your breath a little bit because he's just like so twitchy. Kind of don't know quite what he's going to do, but you just know he's going to get away from somebody and get himself in the open space and then make something happen. And he's got downfield ability too. We saw that a little bit in the touchdown he scored against Purdue. He's done it a couple times out here on the practice field where he's kind of run a couple like deep crosses and worked himself open down the field and made plays in that regard. But like the idea of sort of like running a little play action and just flipping on one in the flat and letting them cook, like that's pretty exciting. And I know it's going to be really hard to break through this receiver pecking order with all the talent they have on hand, but I think and we've talked about this, like I do think it's more of a four-man conversation than it is a three-man conversation. That fourth man right now is Brandon Innes because he can help the offense in a lot of ways.
He's definitely, when you watch him, he's not just like the shiftiest of the group, he also runs angriest of the group, which is like a unique combination of skills because
he looks like a running back.
He runs like a running back, but he also is almost certainly going to be the wide receiver that gets in a fight with someone on the field.
Love that.
Because he's like
a little wild card.
He's an angry human.
Well, shankability.
I love that about him. Always have, always will. Your turn.
Oh wow, look at that.
He's trying to
how the tables
kick it down the road. Wow, I've gone both defense, so I feel like I should probably take someone on offense. And
there's plenty of offensive linemen left.
I was gonna say like Tegra's physical transformation. I would still buy stock in him as the starting right guard for Ohio State. But as much as I talked and fretted, stressed, harped on the tight ends being unit number 9, I think they've had a pretty good start to camp. I would take them collectively. I still do not know if you were going to say this person is definitively tight end 1, 2, or 3, how that would shake out. It probably will shake out that they are going to have to share the load and the responsibilities, and they're going to have to get a little creative with that. Because Berm mentioned, G. Scott being open a lot. I think he's clearly got the best ability as a receiving threat at tight end out of that group, which is not a surprise. He was a former wide receiver. I think Will Kazmarek is going to do primarily the dirty work, and I think he's going to be pretty good at that. Jelani Thurman is right now sort of doing a little bit of both, which I think is encouraging, and I think he grew like 3 more inches taller since the last time I saw him a week ago. It's pretty wild. And I saw Patrick Gerd. I have to mention, I needed to pay closer attention, and I did. He started doing more things as a threat, like out in the flat and catching the football and turning it upfield. Again, it's early. That stuff was happening before the pads were on, so we'll check again on Thursday and see how they show up. They're not perfect. There have been drops. Hard to evaluate all the blocking at this point, but I think if Keenan Bailey was like looking for week 1, some signs that he could feel better about it, I think the tight ends have provided that.
Yeah, I think we're all really looking forward to like a cleaner practice on Thursday where we can watch everything and maybe see more team stuff to get a sense, because again, the blocking stuff at tight end, the blocking stuff at offensive line when they're split is very, very difficult, right? Like, but
for sure.
But Mitchell Melton keeps standing out no matter what we watch.
It's a good one.
That's a very
and
good one.
I've had Mitchell Melton stock for a long time now. I intend to hold on to it forever. I'm never going to sell it. That's great
That's not how
investment
this
strategy.
works. He's going to die with
It's
it.
a great investment strategy. Never sell your stocks, especially when they're super high. That's a terrible idea. The way, again, people around here last year said he was the best pass rusher on this team. And he just has been snake bitten by injuries. And if he's healthy, he plays. And he's going
to stop playing with snakes.
Step 1.
Step 1. He's really good in that role. And the conversation that Jim Knowles had about playing 5 defensive linemen has to be happening because of Mitchell Melton.
I agree.
Because you're going to be able to move JT inside or Jack inside and put Mitchell Melton outside of them. That's why that is being discussed.
Sign me up.
And I think he's going to have it's not a BP show. I think he's going to lead Ohio State in sacks this year.
It's not a BP show, but I will make the boldest P anyone's ever made.
You like that?
He's coming for you, America. He took the challenge. He said, "Oh, you think I'm in preseason form, huh? Watch this." These stonks are going through the roof, and he's never going to sell them.
Never. Mitchell Melton's good. And
Mitchell Melton is good. And
he's
healthy.
He hasn't had a chance to prove it to people, except for everyone in this building, and he's going to be a national name this year.
I was trying to remember, because I think you talked about this last year. So like last year he was available, but he
still
wasn't
not
quite
himself.
feeling himself. Is that what it was?
Yeah, there was still the strength had not fully returned. He had to have, I believe, a little bit of another procedure to help clean some of that stuff up. It was like he had mentioned that it was a 2-year timetable on a full recovery. So when he went through the year, he wasn't quite there. They were limiting his reps. They were, could he have done more? Maybe so, but he was not feeling 100% healthy, and they did not want to risk that with no return. The long-term interests were still being held.
And that plays with your mentals, man, like in a major way.
Yeah, because I think we saw him show up. He would get some opportunities late in games and be like, holy cow, like that's the Mitchell Melton that everyone wants to see. Is he going to play more? Like he couldn't. They weren't going to turn him loose to that point. And we saw that with other players where, if you started asking them to play 30, 40 snaps on the way back from that, like Mike Hall, for example, they weren't going to be ready to handle that.
Yeah. But I don't think he needs to play 30 to 40 now, but even like 10 to 15.
10 to 15.
Will work
Yeah,
for me.
that'd be pretty good. So if you can, jump on those stonks. That's the first one of training camp. Great to get those two. We're going to be back in here in the Woody Hayes Athletic Center, a little Woody Wednesday, actually. I don't remember. Who are we talking to?
I think it's linebackers and running backs.
Linebackers and running backs.
Football.
So good. So there'll be some snap judgments later today. Thanks for starting your day with us on the Podcast Daily. That's Bill and Berm. I'm Austin. Talk to you then.